guys, and welcome back to the Protestant Reformation. So we have been focusing on what the Protestants have been doing. Remember, when we started the unit, we had one Christian church. Now the Christian church has split into Catholic and Protestant. We've been focusing on the Protestants and the Protestants splitting. You had, for example, the Lutherans and the Calvinists, and then you had the Anglicans in England. So what was going on with the Catholic Church at this time when it was losing followers to the Protestants? And remember, also at this time, the New World has been discovered, so people are going over to North and South America, and there are converts there. So what is the Catholics going to do? Let's go for a breakdown. What's happening in Europe is Northern Europe is turning towards Protestantism, many different branches of it, because remember, Protestant has different. And your south of Europe is remaining Catholic. Remember, if you are a Protestant, you reject papal authority. All Protestants, Luther, Calvin, Henry VIII in England, they were all anti-pope. The pope is not. Remember, in the Catholic Church, marriage is a sacrament, and that in the Catholic Church, priests and nuns do not marry, but in the Protestant Church, you do allow marriage. The number of sacraments were reduced in the Protestant Church, and they become symbolic in the Protestant Church. Remember, for Protestants, you went to the Bible for your religious knowledge. That was the source of all religious truth. The Reformation, remember, we talked about. Family life became more civil. Economics was a little different as a result of the Protestant Reformation. So your Protestant nations who broke away went through some economic growth. Okay? So the Catholic Church had to meet this challenge. So that is what you'll sometimes hear it referred to as the Catholic Reformation or the Counter-Reformation. Because after the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Church knew it needed to maintain membership and to gain those new converts. What is going to be our message that is going to have people come back to us? So, the Catholic Church went and used three methods in the Catholic Reformation. They used church councils, which is a meeting of church leadership. They created new religious orders, and they went back to the Inquisition, which is a church court to stamp out heresy. So, in 1545 was the first meeting of the Council of Trent, and this is going to happen over many years. And this meeting of the Council of Trent, which happens 3 times, will establish the Catholic doctrine until 1960. This will say, if you are a Catholic, this is what you're going to follow. There were lots of things that were done. I'm going to simplify down to some of the smallest. 1, it said, papal power was supreme. The Pope is the head of the church, and Catholics will listen to the Pope in religious matters. To reach heaven, to be free of sin, you have to have belief in God, and you have to perform good works. The Bible and church tradition were both sources of religious truth. So for Catholics, for example, you'll have a Bible and you'll have something we call the Catechism and other church documents. All of those are sources of religious truth, unlike the Protestants. Remember, the Protestants say the Bible is the only source of religious truth. You have developing a new sense of seriousness in the Catholic Church. The big thing is that so that seriousness realizes these people want a more spiritual. What does that mean? It's not easy to get into heaven. It takes work. So while we're going to keep indulgences, that act of piety, we're going to ban the selling of them. The church is going to interpret the Bible. They will read the Bible. They encourage the Catholics to read the Bible, but the interpretation that speaks for the faith is what the church says it is, and they keep the Mass in Latin. Where the Protestant churches, the language is going to be the vernacular. Okay? So the Pope kept their reforms. So then let's talk about our religious orders. Our Jesuits are going to be founded by Ignatius of Loyola. These are going to be very, very important people. They are going to swear obedience to the Pope. And the most important thing is they are going to be the missionaries and educators of the church. The Jesuits are the one who are going to go with the Spanish, and they are going to take the message to the New World. They will dominate Catholic history for the next few centuries. Talked about Ignatius. They are the militant arm. They are the missionaries. They are the educators. And because they are highly educated, they're also going to be advisors to kings. Their schools that they set up are very famous. They're sought after by aristocrats. In the United States alone, there are 28 Jesuit colleges. If you go to Georgetown in Washington, D.C., you are attending a Jesuit university. Also, Georgetown Prep, which is a high school, is also a Jesuit-run high school. They are dedicated missionaries. They will spread the word through the Americas. They are going to be very active. They will also be seeking to... So while the Catholics were reconverting, or as we've seen, spreading, they used regular tactics and spread the message. But this was also a time of religious conflict, so this was also happening. You also have the Inquisition, which was a Roman court set up to stamp out heresy. And one of the most famous people caught up in this Inquisition was the scientist Galileo. And Galileo was speaking, according to the church, against church beliefs. His scientific discovery, remember, we haven't talked about it, was using the telescope. And he said he used the telescope and said he had proof of Copernicus's theory that the sun is the center of the universe. So Galileo was tried under the Inquisition. Also, what was happening at this time was Rome, the Bishop of Rome, produced an index of forbidden books, and it was a list of books that Catholics were not allowed to read. It was an example of censorship. So as more and more people are beginning to read and more people are getting ideas, now we start moving into where governments and other institutions are beginning to say, wait a minute, we don't want people exposed to those ideas, and you get censorship. These are some famous writings that have at one time or another been placed on the prohibited list. So, what are the results? Well, one of the results we know is that you're going to have this clash of Protestants and Catholics. In England, we will see that Elizabeth I will create an Anglican church where she combines Puritan beliefs with Catholic traditions. But you will have areas being torn apart. France will be torn apart until we learn in the Age of Absolutism about the Edict of Nantes. Germany, the area of the Holy Roman Empire, which will become the German states, will erupt into the 30 Years' War. So what are the results of this Protestant Reformation? Some of the big-time, long-term results are that you get Europe with a permanent split. Protestant in the north, Catholic in the south. And in fact, you will still get some even conflicts that go into the 20th century. For example, the conflict in Northern Ireland, they call it the time of troubles between Catholics and Protestants. Protestants and Catholics will go in the age of exploration, which is occurring at the same time. They will be racing to compete for converts in the newly discovered lands. You have religious wars break out. So those are some of the results. You also have a changing economic, you have a changing political world. One big change is Europe will, since it's no longer united by religion, a lot of people will focus on the idea that their nation becomes more important. Because remember, like when we talked about Henry VIII, who rules my country, the Pope or the King? We begin to establish identities not just based on religion, but we begin to establish these national identities. You're going to see these national identities especially develop in countries such as England, Scotland, and France.